I think builders need to remember that their team is a direct reflection of them and their business and the standard that they've set for their business.
All right, I think this is going to be a good one, and it's probably one that a lot of builders don't really think about too much. So, what do you think builders need to remember when it comes to their team in relation to how that can affect clients and projects?
I think builders need to remember that their team is a direct reflection of them and their business and the standard that they've set for their business. And what a lot of builders don't often realise is how many eyes are on their business all the time. So all you need to have is a team member who's standing on site, swearing a lot, making a mess, speaking inappropriately, those kinds of things. And you'll have a neighbour who is friendly with your client, who is at home during the day, is hearing all of this, might have young children at home who's then worried about the fact that she's hearing through her windows, that there's these swearing tradies working next door, and all of a sudden you've got a problem in your business because of the way that your team have behaved. And instead you've missed this incredible opportunity that your team can actually be representing you in a far better way to all of the people that are watching your business operate without you even realising.
Yeah, and it is one of those things, like your team have to understand your expectations, and that's also just not your employees, that's your contractors, your suppliers. And I think another important part to remember is it's also applied, like if they're out with your work shirts on and doing things that aren't really a reflection of you and those types of things. So setting an expectation with your team is quite important.
Yeah, I think you do a really good job of this in terms of really explaining to your team what is the standard of DP's Constructions, what do we represent, what do we stand for, and then also calling out any behaviour that isn't in alignment with that. Yeah. And that can be a difficult conversation for you to have as a builder because you want your team to all get along. You don't want to, it is that concern that you want to be friends with the people that you're working with, and forgetting that you actually occasionally need to be their boss and actually call them on their behaviour. And I think that it's really difficult. Builders get into this slippery slope where, particularly if it's an all-male team, gets very blokey on site. And you've got to remember that when it comes to family homes, pretty much like in every industry, women are making 80% of the purchasing decisions, and they can feel quite alienated in that process, and that'd be really difficult for them. So, have you seen that it's worked for you in terms of calling, your team out if they have been slipping up, or, even things like making a mess on site? I have so many women saying to me, I had this person come around, or particularly with renovations where they're living in half of the house, and they're like, oh my gosh, he used the toilet and I couldn't believe it, or he brought his muddy boots in, and, those kinds of things. I know that you do lots of stuff around that.
Look, I think early on, we had a few little issues with some of the people we had in the team, but I think we've built such a good culture now. Like everyone, and I think it does come down to the example I set. Like if I turn up on site, I guess poorly dressed, swearing my head off, like carrying on like a pork chop, then that's going to flow through the team. So I think your team does end up a reflection of you, how you communicate, and then like how that flows through your team then affects other things. So if you're not acting appropriately, and then your site on team's not, and then your contractors, and then it's just a flow-on effect. So I do think it's really important to set a standard of what you expect your team to are they expected to wear their uniforms every day? Like, are they meant to be well presented? Are they speak? I'm obviously on site, there's traders and we all swear sometimes, but we have regularly pulled up some newer tradies and employees of other tradies that are just carrying on ridiculously. Like even setting a standard for the music on site. That's probably been our biggest one over the years. Like just music that's full of swearing and that it's up too loud and it's just annoying the neighbours. So building a culture that respects what I want, and because it is a flow-on effect, because anyone driving past, walking past, living around the site, even people living around the site, having people over and then talking to other people, it spreads really fast. So
yeah, you've got all your site signage with all your branding and logo all over it on the front of the fencing. So yeah.
So you want those people to be seen as a larger part of your team.
Yeah. It's also worth understanding too that your team are all qualified experts at what they're doing. You know, they're either apprentices working through to achieve a trade or they have achieved a trade. And so it's important as well that your clients see that you're working with a team of qualified experts and that you do set the standard of how communication works. You know, one of the biggest problems I see is that builders don't set that expectation with their team or with their clients about who is the point of communication. And so clients will be having conversations with your team members that then, you know, stuff gets dropped, things get missed, and or decisions get made that aren't in keeping with what was in the contract or what was originally agreed. And jobs really start to unravel quickly. And unless you've actually explained to a client, look, all communication needs to come through whichever one person you're nominating, don't go on site and speak to, you know, my team, that can become really problematic as well, can't it?
It's definitely one of those things, you're creating your own problems. So nothing happens to you, it all happens because of you.
Most definitely.